Hello humans, it's just Martine and I'm going to read the Darkangel Trilogy. The Darkangel Trilogy is like a YA late middle grade book series, and my library had all three, so I'm going to go ahead and binge the series. Earlier this week, I actually did finish the first book, The Darkangel, and I ended up giving this 3 stars. I think it's set up really well for the rest of the trilogy. It's a fantasy, and I knew it would be out of my comfort zone, but I really wanted to give it a try, and so far, I'm having a fun time with it. I think the stakes were definitely raised at the end, so that the next books will be, more interesting, although this one still had, really interesting elements, and I thought the world building in here was, intriguing, although there were lots of things in here that reminded me of other fantasy books that I've read pretty recently. So for some reason, even though it's totally different from it, there were things in here that really reminded me of the Chronicles of Narnia, maybe just the overall adventure-y vibe, except add in vampires, which is obviously not in the Chronicles of Narnia, but there we have it. And I specifically read this one already this week because I was preparing for Squash That series, and this wouldn't count for Squash That series, but the second and third books would. So I read the first book and now it's done, and in the coming days I'll be reading books 2 and 3, which book 2 is significantly, well, not significantly, but it's longer than the first one. The third book is about the same length as the first one, so the middle one is a little chunkier, but it's still not very long. It's 330 pages, so not bad at all. I'm excited to see where the story goes from here. So the other day I finished A Gathering of Gargoyles, which is the second book in the trilogy. It is longer than the first one, and I give it 2.5 stars, so that's really unfortunate. I don't know if I was reading it too fast or something, but largely I think this just suffered from a middle book syndrome, in which this had significantly more action than the first book. I don't like action sequences. We also spent a long time stuck in a situation that I felt had really no purpose for the narrative moving forward. I'm really trying to say other things about this because I genuinely have already forgotten what happened, and I finished reading it one day ago. I'm hoping that the last book kind of ties the trilogy together, and so that it's at least a 3-star like the first book was, but I'm a little hesitant going into that now after this one because I don't want the series to go downhill when it was already just an okay series at the start for me. I do think there's potential to mess with the dynamic between Ariel and Irilaf in the third book, and to make that an interesting part of the plot. For this one, they were mainly separated, and of course they're not together in the first one yet, so there's that. It's not a spoiler that they're together. It really doesn't do much to the plot, frankly. Just okay, moving on. This is likely to be a short vlog because I'm really having less thoughts about this than I would like, but it is how it is. Hello, I finished The Pearl of the Soul of the World, and unfortunately, this did not go as well as I hoped it would. I gave this one 2.5 stars, just like I gave the second one, so I liked the first book best in the series. This definitely followed a traditional trilogy arc where it's first book, establishing things, second book, traveling, third book, fighting. I do not like battle sequences. This had a lot of them. It had a really huge battle. I do like that we got a different part of the overall rhyme each book, so that there were 3 main chunks of the rhyme, and each chunk of the rhyme reflected that specific book. I did find that interesting. It was definitely a quick read and I'll give it that, but I honestly felt I couldn't connect with any of the characters in this. In the first book, I could connect with the main character in some ways because I felt the emotions were more realistic and better conveyed. And in books 2 and 3, I felt I couldn't connect to her at all. I felt her emotions were quite shallow. I felt she loved people for no reason. Not that it's bad to love people for no reason, but I didn't sense any connection between them, and she'd be you are the love of my life, and I was is he really though? Because he tried to kill you originally. So yeah, that just didn't work well for me. On the other hand, I'm proud of myself for reading this trilogy because I picked it up knowing it was a fantasy trilogy, knowing that I'm really uncomfortable reading fantasy books and wanting to give it a shot anyway, specifically hoping that I had a better chance of dealing with it because it's a young adult-ish series as opposed to an adult fantasy trilogy. And I do think that helped a bit because the world was maybe not as expansive as it could have been if it was an adult series, and I think that's what really messes me up. On the other hand, I felt like we really didn't get a chance to talk about things like the politics of this world and stuff. Like, we just saw this region, this region, this region, now we're doing this, now we're doing this, now we're doing that, and we never got to stop and talk about like political intrigue or anything, which on the one hand, I would say is because it's a young adult book, but I've read plenty of young adult books with significantly more political intrigue than this. So I honestly don't think that that's the it factor in that. And if I'm going to be reading fantasy, I prefer for it to be high in political intrigue instead of just like, go here, do this, do that, the end. I do think like the ending very clearly set up for a continuation in some way, so I don't know if there's like a spin-off series from this. I just know that this is the end of the original trilogy. It definitely felt like the author was trying to keep things open. At the same time, I'm not sure how the author could have like tied it up more neatly, just with the way that it was like all plotted out. So you'd have to like fundamentally change the series, I think. So it wasn't just like a last ditch thing. So like at the end of pretty much every Mortal Instruments book after the first half of the series, it's like completely wrapped up in my mind, and then in the epilogue something crazy happens that means we have to have another book to deal with it, right? In this, it was like, yes, they were separate like chunks of the adventure. At the same time, we saw the scope of it from the beginning. We knew like here would be the end, and the things that happened that could lead to a continuation were woven through it a good deal of the way in. Like, it wasn't just in the epilogue that they were like, oh no. First of all, because this did not have an epilogue, but I rest my case. So overall, glad I gave this series a chance, but I'm also really glad that I'm done reading it. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below if you have any young adult fantasy trilogy recommendations that might be more up my alley, especially considering what I just told you about what I do and don't like in fantasy. And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!